She said, I'll be back Monday. And on Monday, I got a phone call. My son called me and said, Mom, did you hear? I said, hear what?
Hey Boujee True Crimer, and welcome back to another episode of Evil Strikes. I am your host Boujee Hustla, and this is a Boujee Hustla production. I believe we're on episode 6, maybe? Episode 6 or 5 or 7, one of those. But anyway, if you're new, Evil Strikes is a new series that I started on my channel where I come on camera and I share a true crime case while beating la face. And clearly YouTube's algorithm is doing what it's supposed to do because you're here. So you might as well join the rest of us and subscribe to the channel, get cozy, because there are plenty more videos on the way. Oh, also quick note, I had to take the sweater off because I was too afraid to get makeup on it, and I just threw on like some kind of cameo or tank top of some sort. So it doesn't look like I have a shirt on, but I do. So guys, today's case it's just so heartbreaking because honestly, I felt like there was some negligence involved. I feel like the outcome of this case was definitely preventable. For two, it happened to Black people, which, as we all know, a lot of cases that involve victims that are Black or brown don't really get the attention that they deserve. And three, could happen to any one of us. Like, this easily could have happened to me. This could have happened to my friends, your friends, you particularly. So I really felt like I needed to talk about this case and just, you know, share some ways that we can protect ourselves moving forward when we are traveling, especially abroad. So most of this case takes place in Mexico. However, we're gonna need to backpedal a little bit to America because that's where essentially it starts, but it ends in Mexico. It kind of ends in Mexico. So three friends, Candace Florence, Cortez Hall, and Jordan Marshall, decide that they want to go on a trip to Mexico. Now, before I talk about this trip, let me go ahead and give you a little insight as to the three amigos. So Candace and Jordan were best friends. They grew up in Virginia Beach. They met in high school, I believe, and they were friends, besties all throughout high school, and then they just carried on their friendship into adulthood. Now Candace, she was pretty much like the light of the room. Anytime you were around Candace, you basically felt like you were talking to a best friend. She was pleasant to be around. She was just a joyous person, and anyone that brought her up always just had great things to say about her. She had positive energy, and that positive energy transferred to the people that she was surrounded by. No one had anything bad to say about her, and you could clearly tell because her business that she started, called Glow Through It, emulated who she was. It was all about self-improvement, self-awareness, and she offered candles. Specifically was like her prime product, and I'll have like a little screenshot or screen recording of her business so you can see the products that she sold. So as you can see on her website, those are some of the items that she sold, and she was doing really well. That business actually opened earlier this year of 2022, and things were going good for her. Then over to Jordan. Jordan, he was also a very likable person. He was more of like the inquisitive type. He always wanted to learn about different things, and his biggest passion was traveling. He loved learning about different cultures, different people, different cuisines, just different things outside of his norm. And he loved traveling so much that he actually started a travel agency as a side hustle. So as a travel agent, Jordan had the pleasure of going to Mexico not once but twice this year, with the second time being with his two buddies, Candace and Cortez. So Cortez was a little older than Candace and Jordan, and he actually was Jordan's friend. Jordan and Cortez, they met in New Orleans, and they were both teachers. And then Candace had her candle business. So, you know, they're three young black people thriving, doing their part to become the best versions of themselves. And eventually they decide that they want to go on this trip to Mexico. So they start planning things out ahead of time, as, you know, most of us would do. And Candace is sharing details with her boyfriend Victor, who unfortunately is not attending the trip with her, but nonetheless she's sharing the details. Well, actually that might be fortunate for him. So they're looking into things like hotel accommodations, like what's going to be the best option for them while they're visiting Mexico, as well as other things. And of course, being that they have Jordan as a part-time travel agent kind of makes the process that much easier. So eventually they agree to move forward with their Airbnb, and they set their sights on going to Mexico. So the purpose for going to Mexico was to celebrate a specific holiday, and the holiday that they would be celebrating is called Dia de los Muertos, which is also called the Day of the Dead in English. So Dia de los Muertos is a holiday where people take time to honor the loved ones that they may have lost. So typically family members will place an altar lined with candles in their homes to help guide the deceased back. And those who have died are remembered with a favorite book or toy and their favorite foods. And the holiday is observed for November 1st and November 2nd of every year. So that was the purpose for why the trio was heading to Mexico. And you can see some pictures that I believe Candace uploaded of herself and Jordan. And one of those photos, you see that they had gotten their faces painted in celebration of the holiday. And then I believe there was also another photo that was uploaded of a rooftop restaurant or bar that they visited that had like a great view. You know, they're just doing all the things that tourists do, you know, capturing the moments so they have something to remember whenever they want to look back on their experiences, as we all would do. So they're having a good time exploring the city and learning about the culture, enjoying the food, and doing all the things that they set out to do while they were in Mexico. So on October 30th of 2022 at around 2 a.m. she sends a text message to her boyfriend Victor, and Victor said that everything was fine, like they were having a good time. Like I said, they were out enjoying themselves, indulging in the culture, the food, the drinks, and they were just living life, you know, doing what they came out there to do. And so she even uploaded some photos, which included that photo that I told you about where they were on a rooftop bar and they had a view of Mexico City's skyline. So based on that text message, Victor would not suspect that there was anything to really worry about. Now again, that was 2 a.m. So as you could imagine, a lot of places are starting to close down, and we could assume that the trio decides to head back to their Airbnb since, you know, the night's over. So 2 hours later, Victor would get another text message from Candace, but this time the tone of the text messages wasn't as cheerful as they were 2 hours prior. So Candace had explained to Victor that she really wasn't feeling well and that she was just ready to go home, which is something odd to say, especially if you've been planning this trip out for a while and you're ready to go. Like, most people that plan a vacation are not ready to go back to reality so soon into the trip. But unfortunately for Candace, that was her reality. So like I said, you know, Candace is not really feeling that well. She felt like, you know, she just wasn't feeling good. And so Victor is getting concerned and asked her, you know, where is she? And she's telling him that they have returned to the Airbnb at this point, and that she felt like she had gotten drugged, like someone had put mollies in their drinks or something, which is an MDMA, and her body was trembling. So Candace confirmed that she hadn't taken anything, and she doesn't understand why she's, you know, feeling the way that she's feeling and why all of this is happening to her. She felt like she had been drugged. And so Victor is, you know, trying to come up with some solutions, like trying to figure out like how this could have happened. And he's saying like it's a possibility that you think, he's like, so do you think like it's a possibility that someone could have possibly drugged you, you know, like slipped something into your drink when you weren't looking? Because, you know, nowadays people are pretty crafty, and literally all you could do, you could be holding your drink and you turn to talk to a friend, and if your friend is not noticing what's happening, someone can easily just boop, drop something in your drink, and now all of a sudden you are drugged, and it's just a matter of time before it sets in. So anyways, he's offering these suggestions as to what may have happened. So the last time Candace sent a text to Victor was at 4:47, and the message said, "I wasn't complacent." So 3 minutes later, Candace FaceTimes Victor, and she is viciously vomiting and she's crying. Her face is completely soaked with tears, and she's just really scared because she doesn't know what is going on. But Victor, he can't tell if it's tears or maybe she had splashed water on her face to try and, like, you know, get some life back into her, to get her back in order, because she's flustered. She doesn't understand why all of these symptoms are happening to her. So 10 minutes into that FaceTime call, Victor fell asleep, which is something we all do a lot of times when we're FaceTiming, especially at the hour in which they were talking on the phone. So at some point, Victor wakes up and he realizes that him and Candace are still FaceTiming. However, the screen is black. So safe to say that she puts the phone down, but he can still hear that she is on the other side, because he hears her like dry heaving or vomiting, like a combination of the two. And so instead of trying to bother her, he just allows her to do what she needs to do and assumes that maybe if she keeps on vomiting, it will eject whatever is in her system, and that she'll feel much better after she goes to sleep, and then he'll follow up with her in the morning. Victor later on regretted making that decision. So he did an interview with People magazine, and he stated, "And so that to me is what eats me up, because knowing that I could have helped a little bit more, knowing that at that moment I probably could have called the police, I could have done something, but instead I went to sleep." And I truly hope that he does not beat himself up for this, because at the end of the day, this is not his fault, you know? Like, there was no way for him to know if there was anything else going on with her outside of what they had already discussed. So, and most times whenever, you know, you get a little too lit, have too many drinks or whatever the case is, or if you have ever experienced being drugged before, then a lot of times our body reacts by trying to remove the toxin, either through going to the bathroom or vomiting, you know, or both. So in this case, I mean, who wouldn't assume that's what she probably needed to do in order to feel better? So I really hope that he doesn't beat himself up for that, because there was no way for him to know that something tragic was going to lead right after. So a few hours later, Victor wakes up and he attempts to get in contact with Candace, but he's unsuccessful. So after about 45 minutes, he assumes that maybe she just overslept. But then after he waits another hour from the first 45 minutes that he waited, he knew that something just wasn't right. So at that moment, he remembered that about a month prior, Candace had showed him the Airbnb listing that they ultimately decided on for this trip. So remembering that information, he hops on the Airbnb app and he reaches out to the host and asks her if she can do a welfare check on his girlfriend, because, you know, he explains the story to her, and eventually she would agree, but also informed him that it would be the security at the apartment complex that would be doing it, because more than likely she wasn't on site. About 10 minutes later, Victor would receive a text message from the host letting him know that the authorities were at the house and that they had found the unresponsive bodies of Candace, Jordan, and Cortez. So when they discovered Candace, Jordan, and Cortez, they were not sure if they were alive or what the case was. All they know is that they saw 3 bodies and they weren't moving. And it's crazy to think, like, if Victor wasn't so diligent with following up on his girlfriend to make sure that she was okay, how long do you think they would have sat in that house without anyone noticing that they could potentially have been dead? So later they would confirm that Jordan, Candace, and Cortez had actually passed away. They were no longer with us. And it's just ironic that they went for a celebration of death only for them to end up being victims as well. That's just crazy. So after Airbnb caught wind of what was happening at this particular Airbnb listing, they went ahead and canceled the listing as well as any future reservations so that this could be properly investigated. It was actually reported that Candace, Jordan, and Cortez actually passed away, and the cause was carbon monoxide poisoning. Now that's the part that's really scary because, like I said earlier, this definitely could have happened to any one of us, you know? I mean, I've been to Mexico a few times myself, once before COVID and 2 or 3 times after, and this easily could have been me. You know, I've booked hotels, resorts, you know, both. So I've experienced both ends of accommodations when it comes to traveling abroad, and Airbnb is always an option. So it's kind of scary to hear that there's carbon monoxide poisoning happening in these Airbnbs. And the crazy thing is, as I was researching this, there were other cases, other reports of Americans who traveled to Mexico and died of the same thing, carbon monoxide poisoning. And it's just crazy that Airbnb does not have any sort of mandates for having carbon monoxide detectors in these properties. If they have these carbon monoxide detectors in the Airbnb listing, I'm almost 100% certain that this all could have been avoided. Deaths from carbon monoxide poisoning, unfortunately, are not uncommon in Mexico, which is why I highly recommend that if you are traveling to the country, that you invest in one of those plugins that you can bring with you, or a portable carbon monoxide detector. And I actually went on Amazon and looked up some really good reviewed products, and there was one specifically that I really liked because the guy went into extreme detail with how to check to make sure it actually is working, so you don't fall victim to the silent killer. Now, for the most part, gas lines are typically installed correctly. However, when things go wrong, they can go really wrong. And while I was investigating or researching this case, I came across another case where there was a gas tank that exploded, and as a result there were 2 deaths and 18 injuries at a resort in Mexico. So I don't know what's going on in Mexico, but they really need to start opening their eyes and paying attention to these deaths, these unnecessary deaths when it comes to carbon monoxide poisoning and these gas line incidences. And that particular incident that I'm talking about actually happened in Tulum, near Playa del Carmen. And then in another resort in Tulum, near Playa del Carmen, a couple and their 2 kids also ended up passing away from carbon monoxide poisoning. And the more I read, the more cases I was finding regarding people passing on from this odorless gas. And the sad part is that you have to dig really deep in order to even know that these cases existed, because they are Black or minority descent. But best believe if any one of them were fair-skinned, light eyes, and blonde hair, they would have been on the news faster than 5-minute grits getting cooked. And since the recording of this video, which was probably 2 to 3 weeks from now, which is December 5th, there really hasn't been much of an update in the case, which is really sad. This case is just very upsetting. And then the family, they're trying to get answers in regards to like what exactly happened, and all they're telling them is that it's the carbon monoxide poisoning, but they're not really saying much of anything else. And it's really frustrating when you're not getting the help that you're seeking, especially when dealing with law enforcement abroad. And I hear that all too often, how police departments in other countries are not very forthcoming with information or assisting with investigations, and I just don't understand why. I mean, granted, there's a crime that happened in your city, your country. Of course, it's not going to look good, but it looks even worse when you're not cooperative, because now it looks like you have something to hide. And it's sad because at the end of the day, all these people really care about is their economy and making sure that people keep coming back. So, I mean, if your law enforcement is not really being cooperative when a tragedy does occur, what makes you think that people would want to risk their lives to keep spending money on your economy if you're not going to look out for them in the event a tragedy does happen? That doesn't even make sense, right? Like, granted, we understand that crime can happen anywhere, tragedy can happen at any time, but in the event that it does happen, we need to make sure that you're going to take it just as seriously as if it was one of your own citizens. This is just a very unfortunate situation. And like I said before, I feel like it could have been prevented, hands down. You know, if Airbnb would have been more strict with making sure that certain policies were in place, then ultimately I feel like this may not have happened. I mean, like, Airbnb, they've been in the news primarily for negative reasons, such as tragic deaths like this one here in Mexico. And according to comments on forums and message boards, Airbnb hosts are experiencing declining in bookings. So that just goes to show that there needs to be a change. And honestly, I feel like Airbnb should definitely take part in this wrongful death situation, because if they would have implemented things like carbon monoxide detectors in Airbnb rentals, there's a good chance that these three would still be able to come back home and tell their families and friends about the great time that they had in Mexico. There was one owner of a Palm Springs property that asked if anyone else was having trouble with getting bookings, and a user on Twitter said that Airbnb hosts are now expected to do crazy things. That actually reminds me, my friend who actually is Puerto Rican and having a birthday in January. And to clarify, she's having her birthday in Puerto Rico, which is what I forgot to say on camera. And with her experience booking Airbnbs, these hosts literally will have you do the most. They will literally delegate every task that is meant to be for a cleaning crew to you. So they'll say things like, make sure the beddings are washed, and make sure they're dried and folded, and wash the dishes and make sure they're put up in the cabinets. Hell, they might even ask you to water the lawn before you go. Like, just really weird things. Like, no, you have a cleaning crew that's supposed to do that. And if you don't have a cleaning crew, then you better be doing it yourself. And as far as, you know, everything else, if you are not managing the property yourself, there should be a property manager that you are delegating the task to make sure that the other things get done. They should not be pushed off to the guests. But I say all of this to say that Airbnb really hasn't been in the best light publicly over the last couple of years. Everything from creepy hosts all the way to unnecessary deaths like these three here. They really need to start buckling down on their safety procedures, because carbon monoxide, if anything, should be more of a reason why every single dwelling has a detector, because of the simple fact that we cannot detect it on our own with our naked nose. So why would you not have a detector in the home? And interestingly enough, in the safety section of Airbnb's website, I did read that they offer carbon monoxide detectors for free to the Airbnb hosts. So if they're already free, why not just give each new registered dwelling a carbon monoxide detector, and then make sure that the host maintain said device or replace it when necessary? I don't understand why that wasn't an option for all hosts, regardless of what country they reside in. But I'm not in real estate, so I don't know the rules and regulations regarding said matters. However, I do believe that Airbnb really needs to consider making these carbon monoxide detectors mandatory and not an option, regardless of what level of a host you are or the location you are across the globe. Everyone deserves to feel protected against the silent killer known as carbon monoxide. Was telling me how she's contemplating doing Airbnb because of the fact that they be doing the most when it comes to the guest responsibility. Where is this influx in responsibilities coming from? It's just really weird. Like, have you guys experienced that? Because I'm not about to go outside and water your plants. What? That's your property manager's job, not mine. So here's a crazy incident that I found regarding the requirements of guests from these Airbnb hosts, okay? So there was a Twitter user who said that they had checked out, and in the checkout instructions, it said to feed the neighbor's cat heartworm medicine before putting the key in the drop box. What does the neighbor have to do with my vacation? Child. But in any event, circling back to the case, I do feel that if Airbnb hadn't been so negligent in that specific area, that, like I said, there would be a good chance that Candace, Cortez, and Jordan would be alive and sharing the details of their trip with their family and loved ones. And it's just so sad, especially for the families, because I saw in an interview that they did with Jordan's sister that she found out about her brother's passing just by pure chance, like reading something online, and it happened to have a name very much like her brother, the exact name. And so it kind of like scared her, because she thought like it just had probably been a coincidence that whoever they were talking about had the same name as her brother, but in actuality it was her brother.
I saw my brother's name and I read it, and my heart sank, and the hardest thing was to break the news to my mom.
And then as for Candace, I know that she had spoken to her mom, and she was telling her mom about, she was basically sharing details of the trip and how, they were having a good time and everything. And then the last thing that her mom remembers her daughter telling her is that she was going to either talk to her or see her on Monday when they got back. And that was the last time that she heard from Candace.
She said, I'll be back Monday. And on Monday, I got a phone call. My son called me and said, Mom, did you hear? I said, hear what? I could tell by the seriousness in his voice, and he said, he had to tell me 3 times, Candace is no longer with us. Candace is no longer with us. Candace, and I lost it.
Candace Florence and Jordan Marshall grew up in Virginia Beach, best friends at Kellam High School. They were on vacation in Mexico City with another friend, Cortez Hall from New Orleans. Both he and Marshall were teachers there, but their families say all 3 were found dead inside an Airbnb, word spreading on social media on Halloween Day.
I saw my brother's name and I read it, and my heart sank, and the hardest thing was to break the news to my mom.
The families say Mexican authorities haven't said how the 3 died, one of many unanswered questions they have.
Possibly suffocation from carbon monoxide, but we're not 100% sure. We don't have any documents from her autopsy that was conducted a day or 2 after her death.
The Marshall family says Jordan's body just came home to Virginia, and Candace's family says she will be here soon. And instead of her birthday celebration on Thursday, they'll have a candlelight vigil.
It is harrowing. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Members of both Virginia Beach families went to Mexico to try to get answers, but say it's been a difficult process. They take comfort in knowing that their children made a difference in the lives of others.
Hearing from, his students telling us how much they loved him and how much he meant to them, that's made, us just feel, great, and so proud of him.
And she wanted to do big things in life. And from afar, I followed her from afar, and I stood back and observed my daughter. I saw the thing that she was doing, and she was on her way.
It's just really, really sad. Like, this whole situation is just really sad. So, I don't know if I had said this earlier. I know I mentioned the products, but the carbon monoxide items that you can use for traveling abroad, I'm going to link those in my description box. So if you guys want to keep yourself safe, then you should go ahead and pack them. Again, there's a plug-in option and then there's a portable option. So at least that way, if you're concerned that there's a place you're visiting that may not be your Airbnb, that you can test it right away using the handheld device, and then you can keep the plug-in one for the home or apartment that you're renting on vacation. So not only was this death very eerie because of the time frame in which it happened in Mexico, but Candace's birthday was also approaching as well. And so instead of celebrating her birthday, you know, they ended up having to mourn her loss. In regards to the bodies, at the time this story broke out, I believe Jordan's body had already been extradited back home and Candace's was still on the way, and that was around November 9th. It is a week since the airing of the news clip that I shared with you guys, so I believe that all the bodies are back home now. Jordan, Candace, and Cortez. Interestingly, I'm not really seeing too much about Cortez. It just seems like the story is mainly on Candace and Jordan because they're both from the same town. And I didn't really like that. Just like Candace and Jordan, Cortez also had people who cared about him as well. And it just seemed like all the articles that I was reading or news reports I was coming across just labeled him as the friend of Jordan who was a teacher. Didn't really say too much else about that. So I thought it was important that we learn a little bit more about Cortez, and I tried looking and I ended up coming across an interview that this nurse did, and I think she worked at the school that Cortez taught at. So either she worked there or she was a nurse who just happened to know Cortez. But either way, she said some really nice things about him that I thought I would share with you guys, because I think it's important to learn a little bit about each person rather than treating him like an honorable mention, like he didn't lose his life too.
The news of Kip Morial Middle School teacher Cortez Hall dying at 33 sent an emotional blow throughout the school and disheartened those who knew him.
I still don't understand why somebody, like of all people, why him?
Friends and loved ones say that he was found dead in Mexico City, and the news hit Chelsea Jackson hard when she was on duty as a nurse.
And when I found out, I just froze. Like I had to go in the bathroom and just burst into tears. I couldn't even attend to my patient because I was like very hurt.
And since the news came out, a group chat of around 75 people have been sharing their memories of the former Target employee, choir singer, and so much more.
One of the nicest people, coolest people you'd ever meet.
And while we're working to find out more details about what led up to Hall's death here at Kip Morial, his school family says that he's going to be missed after having such a big impact on the student body just 1 year on the job.
I always tell people Cortez is the type of person that he leaves a lasting impression on your heart.
And as the family mourns for their loss and wait for more details about Hall's death, his friends share their thoughts and their prayers.
They raised a really good young man. His time here on earth was short. His memory will last forever.
This is definitely not how you wish to hear about your family passing on, you know? So I don't know if you guys can see, but my lips are now pink. I'm literally just using the same eyeshadow color that I applied on my eyelids to my lips on top of the matte lipstick. So I'm just going for a real pink look here today, I guess. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my lashes off camera, and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna close out this case. So I want to send a sincere condolences to the families of Candace, Jordan, and Cortez. Dealing with the sudden death of a family member is never easy, and I hope that with time that their hearts are repaired. But that will do it for today's case and also today's makeup look, which I hope you guys liked. All of the information regarding today's look will be down in the description box, and if I find links for my Amazon storefront, those will be included as well for you guys to purchase. And if you have a case request that you would like, all you have to do is go down to the description box again and click the link for the Google form and just follow the instructions on how to submit your request. I will get it, and if I decide to do the video, then you'll see it. So anyway, thank you again so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, become a Boujee True Crimer, okay girl? And don't forget to share, and like. And I will see you on the next episode of Evil Strikes. Take care.